Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Inside Line, a podcast brought to you by SIA, the Snow Sports Industries of America. I'm here with my illustrious co-host, Nick Sargent, who is the president of SIA. Hello, Nick.
Hello, Kristin. Good to see you again. Good to be back.
Good to see you too. And I'm here also with Rachel Grogan of Burton. Welcome to our show. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So, Rachel, again, so stoked you're here. You have such a great story to tell and some great insights to share today. But we have to start with our kickoff question that we love to put out there because it really, I think, levels the playing field no matter who we have on. And that question is, how did you get into winter sports?
That is a great question, Kristin. I would say I started in winter sports as a child growing up in a ski town in Vermont. So I was always a participant in snow sports and started working in my first ski shop during my senior year of high school, AJ Ski and Sports in Stowe, and worked there until I went off to college in New York City and continued to work in a ski shop in New York City. Fun fact, you can find ski shops in New York City, really, really big ski shops in New York City. So I was able to go from small town kid to big city kid, but still maintain that consistency, which was the winter sports industry. So that was my comfort going through high school or going through college rather in New York City.
I understand you have something in common with Nick in terms of that small town you grew up in.
We didn't work in a ski shop in New York City together, I can tell you that much.
There's a little bit of an age difference between us, but that's okay. Who cares? But yes, Nick. So I grew up just outside of Stowe in a little town called Hyde Park, and Nick was just next door in Morrisville. And we haven't ventured very far from Lamoille County.
So tell me a little bit about this town, you two, or your neighboring towns. What was it like? Is it kind of rolling farmlands? Is it in the middle of nowhere? Bring us there.
It's a little bit of that. It's quite a bit of rolling farmland. And, they're both two rural towns that support the main ski resort town of Stowe, where, you're going to find all the tourist activities and so on and so forth. But that's where I learned how to ski, and that's where Rachel skied as well. So we've had that commonality. And then I think that, probably our top commonality is we both found ourselves as alpine skiers working at a snowboard company. And at least when I worked at Burton Snowboards, I didn't tell anybody I skied, and I learned how to snowboard very quickly. But I think that dynamic has shifted. Rachel and I have had a lot of conversations around this.
Yeah, that dynamic has definitely shifted. I've, at this point, been at Burton for 18 years, and just like Nick, I did not talk about being a skier when I first started. I, at the time, actually was dating the manager of the Burton store in New York City, which was kind of and I was like, I want to stay in the winter sports industry when I'm out of college and moving back from New York City back to Stowe. I was like, well, Burton's a great company. They make a lot of outerwear. I can still wear the outerwear, and I'll learn how to snowboard. Sounds great. So I ended up with a job at Burton just out of college, actually, back in 2017. No, 2007, Rachel.
I was going to say, I'm not a mather, but I'm pretty sure that's not right. So 2007.
Not that young. 2007. And yeah, I've kind of been here ever since. But yes, I would say Burton has evolved a lot. We definitely are an inclusive community. It is. And we take that pretty seriously. You can ski, you can snowboard. It is all about being out on the mountain.
That's great. Awesome. Well, with that, you have quite a long record at Burton. And before we get into what you're doing here, I want to find out, I think you, well, let us know, how did you start? And then I'm curious to know when you overlapped with Nick and ultimately bring us to your role today, because that's kind of where we're going to do some problem solving here today, I think.
I think if I remember correctly, I left Burton in 2015, the spring, and Rachel had been there a few years prior, maybe more than a few years. And we knew each other from external department, who knows what, but we didn't really work together. Rachel was in one area and I was in a different area, and I don't recall where you started, Rachel.
Yeah, so when I started in quality assurance. So I've always kind of worked in like the background, so to speak, which I kind of like it back there. Uh, which
Well,
was
that's
not
not true because that's where all the fun
role.
was.
With what?
That's where all the fun was when you wanted to learn about what the company was doing,
Yeah.
and then the product.
Yeah.
You went to the back office just to get some education.
Totally. So I started in a role in quality assurance. It was funny. The interview was like, okay, so what's this job for? And, I'm nervous and like, well, we really actually just need somebody to organize us. And I was like, oh, I can definitely organize you. I don't know what I'm organizing, but I can organize you guys all day long. And so I came in and very quickly started managing projects and organizing quality specifications and helping with internal and external policies, all of the, again, really fun stuff. And that kind of evolved into a more formal project management role. At that time, quality was a pillar of our product development department, so it worked alongside product development. There was a brief stint in there of handling compliance and regulation for the organization because we hadn't really had that role, but I was like, yeah, I roll up my sleeves and read some contracts. Why not? And then I took a brief, about 15-month hiatus away from Burton and came back in a role focused more exclusively on managing Asia operations. So, do you have a question?
No, that's a big change.
Oh, yes, it was.
That's
so,
the look of shock on my face. I'm like,
yeah, that's fair. It was like this kind of like informal project management, help us get ourselves organized role. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'm young. I would like a little more structure than that. So I left and went to Keurig Green Mountain in a project management capacity. But the culture there changed in a way that I was not on board with. And I got a call from my former boss. Always leave your employer on a good note. Got a call from my previous boss and was like, we just made some changes on our Asia operations side of the business. Are you ready to come back? I was like, yeah, sure. What does that look like? They're like, you're going to go to China a lot. And so I came back and took over basically the administration for what we call Asia Ops, which is all of our manufacturing support employees on the ground throughout China, Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, all South.
No small task when you're based in Burlington, Vermont, and having to go to China, Vietnam, Korea, etc.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, here you are in your mid-20s, all of a sudden traveling all over the world. It was an amazing career move for sure.
How many years did you do that?
For Asia Ops, I would say with the most recent career change, I just barely relinquished that responsibility about 18 months ago.
And I bet they're like, how about you come back in and help us with tariffs?
No, I got to hire the most amazing person to backfill my position. So she is off and running to the races, but she has a mentor when she needs one. Which is
awesome.
So if you had the stomach for it, Burton would send you all over the world as much as they wanted you and as much as you wanted to. So those were some of the nice benefits of working at Burton if you were adventurous and certainly giving you a lot of opportunities to meet wonderful people, which only help you when it's time to backfill.
Yeah, and I think that was always the really interesting part is you're going to these more industrial zones in what is a very warm climate in South and Southeast Asia and China. And you're seeing like the love for winter sports in the employees that work in those factories. And it's kind of amazing. Like the breadth of influence that the winter sports has, not only on winter sports participants, but also the people that are all part of the chain that make it all come together is pretty amazing and powerful. People there loved working with our brand, and it was always fun to go there.
And it definitely gives you a much broader perspective of the business, the lifestyle, the people, and and then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're back in Burlington, Vermont, or in my case, Morrisville, Vermont, and Rachel, High Park, very small community, and you've just had this amazing global experience for the week, and you find yourself at the coffee shop talking to someone who probably hasn't left the county.
Yeah.
But it's, the perspectives aren't that far off.
No. I mean, I think that's also part of the love of being in Vermont is it's a really wonderful place to come home to, but it's also really great to go out and get different perspective.
I have a
great
similar
place to go.
situation. Yeah, I'm in a pretty small town here and it's like literally the best of two worlds. You get to travel, but you get to come home to like a small community and nature, which is awesome. You're in Durango. So
I think that keeps you real. I think that keeps your love and passion for the job, winter sport, real and grounded, but just gives you that greater global perspective, which I think makes you very effective in your roles. Speaking of your title, we touched on this a little bit just as we were getting ready to kick this recording off, and for all instances, it's VP of IT, but
Yes.
you've got a mouthful of a title. I'd love to hear that title one more time.
Yeah. So yeah, VP of IT is definitely the abridged version, but VP of Enterprise Technology and Business Integration. And I would say the business integration part, this role evolved about 18 months ago. And prior to that, so in between the Asia operations role and that transition about 18 months ago, my career evolved to take on supply planning, vendor management, quality assurance, all things kind of not just like managing Burton's owned employees within Asia, but also all of our manufacturing and our manufacturing relationships and operations. And I think what that has allowed me to do is learn our business really, really well. And probably about three and a half years ago, we were struggling with we were struggling to deliver on a larger enterprise-wide project, and kind of similar to that same mentality when I first joined Burton. I was like, oh yeah, well, I can help get this organized. Like, sure, I can see the path to go live. And at that point, I had a really strong, I was our VP of supply chain at the time at that point, and we had a really strong leadership team that was able to kind of take over while I leaned in really heavy on this IT side for about 12 months before we formalized the shift there. And what the organization was looking for was someone who could bridge the gap between the technology needs of Burton and how that actually translates into the business need. I think we've traditionally had more technologist-oriented leaders in this role, which is great. But what we were missing was the integration into our business, and how does technology fuel innovation for Burton, not just like that there was a more harmonious relationship between IT and the business. And so that was the transition about 18 months ago, and now I run IT.
So I kind of see it like the plane flying over the beach, right? Yeah. But really, like if you're on the beach and you're going into the water, you're kind of the person who brings all of that together. And the timing is super interesting when you look at the lens of compliance that's happening now globally. And I'm wondering if you can just expound a little bit on like how getting to know the business really well and seeing that the headwinds and change that's coming with product and messaging compliance, like how that's really resulted in Burton, I think, potentially having a strong foothold right now.
Yes, I think what Burton made an incredibly meaningful commitment on about 10 years ago was a commitment to social responsibility and sustainability. And what that has evolved into, especially in the last few years, there's been a lot of regulation in that area. So what originally started as do the right thing for the planet and do the right thing for the people that are touching your business and your chain of how product comes to fruition has turned into requirements, has turned into laws, has turned into rules. And so we've been in a really good place to be able to we've had a little bit of a head start on just having that already be part of the ethos of Burton. So when you're looking at things like forced labor, we already had really strong practices in place to prevent us from being in places like that or react to things like that as they came up. So I would say that's to say we had a really good foundation. It's interesting in my new role because technology is going to become an enabler of how quickly you can or can't comply with these things. And I think that when I think about compliance, I always think about two really important foundational pieces. And one is understanding your entire raw material chain that goes into making your finished goods, and then understanding the people that touch that raw material chain, so like your supply chain map. So what chemistry is in your product and what is the supply chain that it goes through and is made? And kind of, if you know those two things, navigating the more compliance and regulatory market becomes an awful lot more straightforward. Not to say that it's not arduous, but it becomes a lot more straightforward. When we talk about things like tariffs, that makes it a little bit more complicated. But from like a pure compliance and regulatory standpoint, those two things help a lot in being able to answer to some of those regulations globally.
So it's amazing. It's amazing to have this discussion because you've come from a shop kid to virtually, helping Burton modernize in this modern era. Mm-hmm. It's not just about making product. There's so much more that goes on behind the curtain, and I don't think a lot of our listeners really understand the complexities of that. And I think it's one of those topics that's so germane and so important for anyone in this business to understand how the product is conceived, how the product is conceptualized, and then, all of the other areas of employee touching before it even sees the light of day to a retailer, let alone a consumer. Yeah. And, that's a huge journey.
It is a huge journey.
And it can be like 18 months, 2 years. Some people, I know some companies do it on a shorter timeline, but like the technology piece that you're running now, I think is part of the reason you'll probably be positioned to be agile. I mean, thinking about the data that you have to pull together to have the compliance and to also have the eyes everywhere that you need to and have the transparency you need.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Yeah, I think if memory serves me correct, Burton is 2 years out with its product in understanding, the materials, where that material is coming from, the product, et cetera, which is, it's a ton of time. It's a ton of investment before any company or any piece of product sees any revenue on the back end. Yeah. So the investment that goes into that is magnificent.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, context, we're actively delivering Winter 26 to our own retail and our partners, our wholesale partners. We're getting ready to purchase everything that we're going to need for Winter 27, which is this time next year. And we're already well underway on our Winter 28 development and probably thinking about Winter 29. So yes, you're always kind of working with some combination of 4 different seasons at any given point. So
I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask for a little bit of a bird's eye view into how you're managing the changing compliance landscape, because you're obviously like working far ahead like a lot of companies are. Do you have anything you can share with us in terms of how you might be able to pop a few things in that might be coming to light or, landing from a regulatory environment, maybe 6 months into a process that you may not have been anticipating?
That's a good question. I think that for us, we are still trying to nail down a agile technology that will allow us to capitalize on all of that underlying data, but then craft that in a way that meets whichever regulation crops up tomorrow that we can't anticipate today, so that it doesn't become this. I'm definitely someone who takes a step back and looks at kind of like the sum of all parts and like, what is the lowest common denominator, and how can we find a technology that takes into account CPSIA and the Uyghur Forced Labor Act and Digital Product Passport and AJAC, and finds kind of like the common denominators through all of those things and helps to like lessen the burden on employees to produce the documentation or the requirements that are needed to satisfy those regulations. So I think we still have work ahead to do that, but I think that there is a tool out there that we haven't found yet that we might be working on that can start to stitch those things together.
I think it's okay to talk about it. Nick, why don't you go ahead and let that cat out of the proverbial bag one more time?
Yeah, I mean, Rachel knows this, so just full transparency. Rachel also is the board chair of Snow Sports Industry of America. So she is germane, well-versed, and helping lead SIA into the future. And with the background that Rachel has and the journey she has, she's been very instrumental in helping us with our compliance platform that we're launching in early 26 with SnapLink and Ami Bornstein as our partner. And so we've been talking about this for a while, and certainly at the board level for a lot longer, to really get our hands wrapped around this regulatory assessment tool, so we can, when we deploy it, really hit the ground running and help companies really understand what's at play with the product, with their materials, with their company, so they can make good decisions and they can avoid nasty invoices and bills from states or countries, and they can continue to be compliant as they're evolving their journey. What makes this conversation really interesting is that, you know, Burton, as a leader in the winter sports space, let alone the global winter sports space, Burton has never shied away from jumping in head first, whether it be climate, whether it be regulatory, whether it be compliance, using the right materials to enhance their product and drive this industry forward. And that's what makes it really interesting for one, this conversation, but two, as we look at the broader industry. And Rachel certainly has a laser focus on that, which makes our conversations at the board level really interesting and intriguing. But the task that the board applies to SIA, that we lead and we come and manufacture.
Yeah, and I think that through the board work, we're always trying to make sure that we are delivering value to membership. And it's kind of like, we do have a lot of conversation about what are those topics that really do impact the entire winter sports industry. And that could be someone that is it is an industry leader like Burton, or it could be somebody that is a 5-person operation and is trying to find their place in this industry. And no matter what, we all are, no one gets to dodge regulation, unfortunately. And so there is a conversation. Definitely.
I don't know. I'm going to interrupt you on that one.
Okay.
I think I've spoken to a lot of our winter sport members that are trying to dodge.
we can get really creative. We are a very agile, creative industry. Not taking any of that away from us. But at the end of the day, we all are subjected to it. Whether we're creative and trying to dodge it or not, we are all subjected to it or could be subjected to it. And I think that I'm really proud of the work that SIA is doing to help make navigating what is a really arduous, complicated set of work much more straightforward.
I think it's fair and safe to say that I never thought in a million years that regulation and compliance was going to be the area that we were going to hang our hats on, Rachel. Either
Sorry.
one of us.
Sorry.
Yeah. But certainly we find ourselves here, and as being opportunistic, but also creating a responsibility and accountability back to the membership. This is an area that, as Rachel said, you can't dodge it. It's not going away. We have a responsibility to deliver industry-worthy tools to help you navigate. And, I was thinking when Rachel was talking, about the SIA board, the board is comprised of 11 different board members from all segments of the industry.
Yeah.
retail, hard goods, soft goods, accessory, large, medium, small scale. So we have the luxury of scale. We have the luxury of sharing best practices without getting into some of our areas that we're not supposed to be in from a regulatory space within the industry. But we can create tools that will help large, medium, and small companies along with their journey, whether they're just dipping their big toe in or they're so far advanced like a Burton that we have a lot of experience to draw from.
Yeah.
I also think it's fascinating that you are a retailer. You're in apparel and footwear and accessories, and you're global. So I just want our audience to hear, like, Rachel's an exceptional person to be chair of the board because this is a person who can actually see where the puck is going. And one example of that is knowing that when consumers start to see more, of the regulations come into their zone at retail or online or whatever it is, whether it's through banned substance or just like virtue signaling from campaigns, you have such an interesting theater of your brand no matter where we find it. And it always feels authentic. So I feel like in some ways, Burton could really set the tone for what retailers are going to do going forward. So I just feel like it's really a gift to have you in this role and be able to kind of, bring all those different facets of warning and coaching and, getting in there with us on all of it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. I mean, you look like pretty refreshed for having the role that you have. Don't you think, Nick?
I told you guys at the start.
Rachel does not get flustered very often. I've yet to see it, to be very frank. But, I think that the thing that I learned early on in my time at Burton is that there is a no bullshit factor. And at the time when Jake was part of the company and really driving the industry, that was the way it was. It was, give me the facts, don't give me the fluff. And I think Rachel and I communicate that way with our respective roles, and certainly with Rachel being board chair. And so we're able to kind of cut through the bullshit and get right to the point and the facts. And I think the other board members appreciate that tremendously. And I think a lot of our members do as well. I mean, they just, everyone talks about time. I don't have time. I'm so busy. And that's the one or two qualities you hear frequently. So we're trying to be as insertive with the work that we're doing and the direction that SIA is tasked with, and not wasting anyone's time with any fluff or anything that's going to be a distraction without a result.
I guess I want to ask, you've been at Burton a long time, so you must be emblematic of the culture there. And whether it's a no bullshit or a chill, there's something about you that works within that organization. And you're setting up scaffolding around different aspects of the business. Have there been a few, attributes of the culture there that you think have really shaped you in terms of having the confidence and the leadership and maybe the mentorship to others that you've gained while being at the one company for so long?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I am intrinsically a silver lining and kind of like more on the optimistic side of things. And I think that from just like my own career, like every winter sports industry on the planet goes through its ebbs and flows. And no matter what, I will always try to find the silver lining or the optimism in something. Sometimes I think to a painful spot, but it has also, I think, served myself well in this career of like, or like the confidence, like, I can go do that. I can go take on IT. I've never held the technologist role in my life, but I can totally go do that. And there's a really sound support network behind there. I've worked with members, like I've worked with John Lacey for a really long time, and he's someone that I really respect. And like
John's the CEO of Burton Snowboards.
Yeah, and he's always been a really like strong advocate in the background of just like, of course you can go do it. Like, you're good. Like, just go take that risk. And I think that is something that Nick's, there is a culture here of taking calculated risk. And I think that culture it is a culture that supports that. It is, you can kind of step outside of your day-to-day world and go explore something else, whether that's from a career perspective or you really think that like this other thing may be the next most important thing to the business, like you're empowered to go explore and take some risk. And I don't think that is always true in employment situations.
Or
So I
maybe
think
with some of your peers, even. Like, I think some companies
Yeah.
are not set up. And Nick, I'd love to hear your take on this. Just in terms of it's almost like we're talking about agility, but in some ways the company was born that way. It's not like it was born, somewhere else a long time ago and moved into this market. But you've always been global. And I would love to hear both of your perspectives because I think it would help our awesome audience, like, hear how that's possible. Like, you're literally like proof of the 4-minute mile.
They definitely gave you the running shoes to go try your how fast you were on the track.
Yeah.
But it was, at least in my time, and it's been, I've been at SA for 10 years. I just had my 10-year anniversary a couple weeks ago, which is hard to believe. So I've been away from Burton for 10 years, but in that 10 years, I've also been on the other side of the glass, looking back in the building. But I've also had good colleagues, Rachel obviously being one, and John Lacey being another. And I just saw Donna Carpenter the other day at a golf tournament, the Chill Golf Tournament in Burlington, which was great. So again, you still have those friends, you still have those relationships and those contacts, and that contextual relationship doesn't change. It's very much the way it was when you were working together, although the boss-employee relationship is gone. But when I was working at Burton, it was, you can have as much rope as you want to hang yourself, and we're going to empower you to do your job. Mm-hmm. And if you do your job well and you lead, there's going to be a lot more flexibility and latitude in your job, in the growth of the company. And if you are bought into the mission and you are a go-getter, as well as keeping your eyes wide open, looking left and right frequently before you cross the street, there's only opportunity there. And a lot of the opportunity that I experienced came with an element of risk. And I was tasked to drive awareness to a really core niche sport. And and that was my task, and I did it, and I think I did it extremely well. I think the numbers backed me up all day long. But Burton at the time, and I still see this today, is if you are willing to take a risk, if you are calculated, how to achieve your goal, they're going to give you all the latitude you need, and that translates beyond Burton. That translates into your next job, into your next role, into your family, into your life, and how you operate. And I think those were really important lessons. I think we do see a lot of conservative leadership within the industry. I do see a lot of people that are afraid to make a decision, let alone a decision that might fail. And the adage, you're not learning if you're not failing. So there's a lot of latitude that you can achieve personally, professionally, if you're willing to really take a look left and right and see where you want to be.
It starts with leadership, though. And my guess is, Rachel, that when you said you had a great person or team take over what you did in Asia, for example, or maybe the supply chain component, you were never like looking in this rearview mirror saying, well, this is how it has to be done because that's how it's always been done. That just sounds to me like everyone likes to read about that and say that all the time, but it is a true barrier to us evolving, especially during a time when we're getting so many balls thrown at us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that there's an element of taking risk. And I think that the other thing is there is an element of always showing up with curiosity. And I think that is
100%.
Yeah. I think you've got to always look at how is your team structured? How are we delivering on work? Are we doing the same thing the same way as we have been for the last 5 to 10 years? Are we faster? Are we slower? Are we just stuck in this rut? And I think That is one of the things in this leadership role is it's not to dismantle and change everything, but it is to constantly kind of push ourselves to make sure that we're doing it as effectively and as efficiently as possible, but also like, are we doing the right work? I think that any organization, we can get so focused on maybe the like not important things, like the things that are important in your like little tiny bubble, but you're like, how is this impacting the brand or the market or like the bigger industry at large? You're like, okay, maybe that's not where I want to spend my time. I'm going to go spend it somewhere over here. But I think the curiosity to kind of challenge status quo is also another thing that I have found to be really successful. It's just like, well, why do we do it that way? Okay, you're telling me we do it that way, but why? And then I think once you start to get into that open-ended conversation of why, you start to be like, we're just doing it that way because it's the way we've always done it. Well, have we thought of? And I think I am one of those kind of annoying people that when I get into these conversations, I ask an immense amount of open-ended conversations to try and pull out the why. And then we start to figure a different path forward. But yes, I think calculated risk and definitely remaining curious. And I think, when you're in a role or when you're at an organization for 18 years, if you're not curious, man, that just gets really dull and boring. At least it does for me.
That's a tough way to make a paycheck. That is a tough way. You know, but I mean, challenging the norm is, that's an everyday responsibility, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And, and there are so many great people in this industry, and there's great people around us in other industries. And there's so much to learn and so many people to draw off of as well.
Yeah.
But I love that part.
That was one of our questions as we look to kind of wrap up with our time here, because we want to respect your time, is, your future outlook on the industry. I mean, not only are you sitting in what I think a lot of us look up to Burton, like what would Burton do? What would this major retailer do? Like that's just sort of how we've always done things in these specialty markets, I think. Mm-hmm. And you're also global. You've had such a wide swath of roles there and built a lot of different frameworks. And I'm just curious to know, like, where do you see like the positives in the outlook for the industry?
I mean, I think that the industry, and when I say the industry, I'm thinking about, brands and retailers, and not necessarily through the consumer lens, which that's a whole different conversation, but through the brands and retailers, rep groups, partners, like, I think that there is an opportunity for more industry collaboration. I know we talk about this a bit in the board, but there's so much pressure facing all of our respective organizations that sometimes it's just better to approach those things with your friends. Like, at the end of the day, yes, I work at Burton, but I know people at a whole bunch of different organizations, and they all struggle with the same thing. And it's like, wouldn't it be better if we all could just kind of come together and work on approaching some of those things together? I know Nick and Maria are doing really great work on building that collaborative platform. But I think as we look to the future, I hope that there's more collaboration. I don't think that everybody has to go it on their own to try and tackle topics like compliance. I think every organization is going to come up with their own unique strategy, but how they go about, like, I think that there's a really big knowledge base that people can share in. I know we're open to that. We're open to helping the entire industry learn what we've done. And we have really great people across our sustainability and product and compliance teams that are willing to share in what we've done to help be a little bit more in a mentorship role as needed. I also hope that at some point wholesalers, retailers, brands all come together to align on a unified set of just like, what are the requirements that we need to provide to you, just so that it minimizes the unique and different asks and streamlines things on the compliance side.
I can tell you with certainty that will also cut down on consumer confusion and greenwashing.
Oh my gosh, totally.
Let's get ahead of it.
Yes, please.
I am all about simplification and streamlining on like these big meaty things. And I think it doesn't need to just be done at an organizational level. I think it can be done at the industry level.
We'll have links in the show notes to SIA's great events. There will be information on each one. We have 2 regional and 1 global. And on the note of global, because you've spent so much time, I think, working in this global industry, whether we want to admit it or not, it truly is like smaller than ever and more connected, even though it's more massive because of the countries and regions we reach and do business in. So I just really want to applaud SIA for the work that they've done integrating with Europe, for example. And I have a feeling there's a lot more on the horizon in terms of international supply chain tied with the great work they're doing in compliance. So if either one of you want to speak to that, but having a bridge, especially to Europe, I think, and a two-way conversation is going to help the market grow much faster together.
Yeah, we're operating in a global capacity, whether you recognize it, know it, or not. Burton has a global footprint. The other companies that we service and our members are global in nature, and it doesn't stop just outside your front door or your state or the boundaries of your country. It goes, east and west and back and forth. And the issues are the same. The issues are very common. There might be some nuances by region, by country, by state, but the issues are the same. And so, that's the task that SIA has, is to really take those common issues and bring them to the forefront to solution orient the industry. And so that's what we are tasked to do. That's what we are doing. We have our regional events in October in Burlington and one in Boulder, Westminster. And then we have a global event as well in Snowbird, where we'll have a lot of international folks there, as well as key leaders and participants in our sport joining us. And we are trying to create access. We're trying to create bridges between regions, flow of information. We go back and forth to Europe as much as anyone else does in this industry, working with our colleagues in Europe and in Asia, and really trying to hit the nail on the head to solve these issues. And I think we're doing a good job. I think we have a long way to go, and we have the right people doing it. So that makes it fun and exciting, but it's a huge lift. This industry doesn't really like change too much, so we have to be very careful how we approach that. Shocker. But we are doing it, and it is germane to what we do every day here.
Yes, like it or not, you were hired to be a change agent. Good thing you have Burton on your resume. Seriously.
like it or not, we like change around here.
Yes. And also, there are so many membership resources, and there's a lot of great content that's publicly available too. We'll have links to everything. Before we wrap up here today, Rachel, though, we have to ask, what is the one piece of advice about the winter industry you would give a young you, even though you're still young, in my opinion, but maybe one that might have been just leaving that ski shop in New York?
That's a really great question.
I think you know the answer. I think you know the answer.
Yeah, I think that my advice would be I think it's not just one thing, but I think it's to find a mentor and an advocate. I think that, the old adage of it is who you know, and sometimes getting breaking into this industry can be hard, but find an advocate. And I think there are ways to go out and put yourself out there and network. The events that you just rattled, the Burlington one, the Westminster one, the global one, those are all networking opportunities. But network, find a mentor, find an advocate, and then have an abundant amount of patience. And then after that, then I think is continue to be curious and take calculated risk. But yes.
That's awesome. Nick, anything you want to add before we wrap up here today?
I just think, Rachel nailed it on the head there. You've got to take a risk. You've got to stay true to your passion. You have to find an advocate. And then lastly, you have to be patient. The job's not going to find you. You're going to find the job. And it might not be on your time frame, but you will find that job. You will find the foot to get in the door. And and when you get in, staying curious and taking that passion and running with it, it's definitely gonna help you. And it is a wonderful industry. There's so much opportunity. I don't think there's a brighter opportunity now. And it's our industry. The leaders that we had are now since retired, and we're leading. And and we're looking for those next leaders as well. So a day doesn't go by that we're not looking in the rearview mirror to see who's coming up behind you fast.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we like those go-getters.
At the end of the day, we are all in the business of selling fun.
Yes.
We have
How
to.
hard is that? How hard is that?
It's not hard. Yes.
Well, thank you so much. It was a really fun conversation, and I definitely can say we'd love to have you back to talk about numerous other topics. I mean, consumer trends being one, inclusive workplaces and the work that you do to make an impact with your brand being another. There's so many things that we can really thank Burton for in terms of paving that way and showing proof of concept that change does work, especially
Great.
with that younger consumer. So thank you so much for all you do, and especially for being the chair of our board and spending time here with us today, Rachel.
Yes. Thank you, Kristin, for having me.
Thanks, Rachel. Kristin, as always, thank you.